the first guided meditation in the Total Work course. This one has to do with coming to a deeper understanding of the conception of self evident in the Total Work dispensation. Let's begin. Find a comfortable position. If you are accustomed to seated meditation, then come to a comfortable cross-legged seated position. If not, you may wish to place yourself in a chair. In either case, settle yourself into the posture. Allow your lower body to be firmly grounded and see that the spine itself is firm, erect, making an S shape. Gently close the eyes. To begin with, take a quick scan of the body to see whether there is any residual tension, anything you're gripping or holding on to. Soften the muscles in the face. Let the eyes sink back into their respective sockets. Let the jaw melt. Notice your breathing. Does it feel slightly irregular? So be it. Just notice whether it's a deep inhalation or a shallow inhalation. Don't try to change anything, just let the breath come as naturally as it does. Today's meditation will be a departure from what I take to be standard Eastern practices. It's customary, at least in the Taoist and Chan and Zen traditions with which I'm most familiar, to speak of the emptying of the mind or the fasting of the mind. To see this, I quote from David Hinton's recently released book, China Root, Taoism, Chan, and Original Zen. In his chapter on mind, he begins thus. Mind in Chan, Chinese Zen parlance, refers most often to consciousness emptied of all contents. To be emptied of all contents is to come to empty mind or no mind, or as some Zen Buddhists call it, non-thought. This is a wonderful practice, and it is an excellent place to begin for those interested in deepening their understanding of the nature of consciousness and reality. However, it also misses something, I think, and I would like to point to what is missing in this guided meditation. In this case, therefore, I would like to, quite the contrary, pay very close attention to the contents of consciousness. What we will experience and see, I believe, is the historical, cultural, and economic construction or constitution of ordinary mind. In other words, what are the sorts of things ordinarily thought and felt, and where, from a historical, economic, and cultural point of view, do those thoughts and feelings come from? All right, let's turn to the contents of consciousness then. Notice as you examine arising thoughts, are they present oriented? I doubt it. Past oriented or future oriented? As you consider this matter more deeply, do you not see that for you, for the ordinary mind, most thoughts today, i.e., in the contemporary world, are future oriented? Even if it is the case that you utilize memory of the past, is it not true that that memory is marshaled on behalf of anticipation of a possible future state of affairs? Just notice how curious that is. Notice that in your own experience, the preponderance of thoughts, I submit, will indeed turn out to be future oriented. So much for temporality. Come now to the actual contents of your thoughts. See that they actually tend to consist of imagined doings. And these are of two kinds. The first set concerns things you need to get done, or things coming on the horizon. You may call to mind tasks, or various activities, or sundry projects, or meetings coming up, or in any case, some kind of preparation for what is up ahead. Isn't that a curious thing? Namely, that many of the thoughts are directed at things not done, things in the midst of being done, or things that need still to get done. How did all this come to pass? The second category of doings turns invariably back on the subject or the purported doer. You might call to mind any kind of self-improvement projects related to health or mental well-being or education in some technological or technical endeavor. You are trying here to work on yourself or to work on the self. This too is a kind of doing, a self reflexive kind. As you survey your thoughts more and more, do you not see that they actually are doings? Doings related to objects and doings related most explicitly to the subject. Thus, we can come to the third part of our guided meditation or our inquiry together. Ask yourself the question, to whom do these thoughts arise? These future oriented thoughts having to do with doings. You might say that they arise to me, but in what particular sense are you conceiving of yourself in all these instances? It should be plain to see that the conception operating here is that of the agent. Isn't it interesting that you take yourself to be an agent who, so to speak, is in the driver's seat, driving this vehicle, as it were, toward the completion of various doings? If you start to feel a sense of guilt or overwhelmingness, neither feeling actually undoes what has been understood intimately so far. The guilt you experience is the guilt of not being a good enough agent or of not fulfilling a sufficient number of tasks or of doing those tasks, but perhaps you allege not doing them well enough or whatever. Put this picture together. The picture having to do with future oriented thoughts, as well as with doings on the world, as well as doings bent back on the self, and with the alleged source of those doings, namely the agent sitting in the driver's seat. In a word, what can we make of all this? How can we synthesize this deeply felt, intimate inquiry? What we can see right here is the emergence of the very notion of the worker. The worker just is the one manifesting itself according to these conditions. And is it not utterly interesting and indeed almost mysterious that the worker becomes the dominant figure? Pan back for a moment, noticing how parents, neighbors, older people, teachers, institutions, educational institutions, governments, companies, and all the rest are involved at least partially in the cultivation of workers who can work on the world in one breath while working on themselves in the next. Here is exactly where we find ourselves. Except this is not the end of the inquiry. Noticing the emergence of the worker is instead only the beginning. As we come to the end of this meditation, is it possible right here to realize that just insofar as you are witnessing the coming into being of the worker, it must be the case that you are not that? Let this felt understanding sink in very, very deeply.